Good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here today. My name's Amy West. I'm the Principal Director of the HIT Lab Advisory Services, and I am also the Chair of the Women's Health Tech Initiative here at HIT Lab. And I'm so excited to be the host today to actually support our conversation with Hahn-Ey. Before we jump into that, though, I'd like to highlight the fact that we have our March Digital Health Symposia coming up on March 27th. This year's theme is From Plate to Application, Transforming Health Through Digital Innovation. And we're excited to hopefully have you be there to join us as well. Also rapidly approaching is our in-person summit. It's going to be May 6th to 8th in New York City as a part of our New York City Healthcare Innovation Week. More information about both of these events will be posted in the chat, so be sure to check those out at your leisure throughout the session today. But to jump into the main portion of our program, I would like to welcome our guest speaker today, Dr. Hahn-Ey, who is with Pfizer. She is the International Medical Vaccines and Antivirals and Anti-infectives lead at the organization. Hahn-Ey, welcome. We're so happy to have you join us today.
Thank you so much, Amy.
So to kick off, before we get into deep conversation, I would love for you to share a little bit about your background. And I know we've chatted before, and I think you have a wonderful background, education, and experience from a global perspective. And we're excited to hear about that background and how your perspectives on women's health in general from that global view. Super interested to hear your side of the story. So share a little background on yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much, Amy. So first of all, it's great to join today's session. I'm very, very excited, and I'm looking forward to not only speaking and sharing my experiences, but also answering any questions from the audience. So I'm Korean. My name is Hahn-Ey. I'm a urologist by background. I was educated and trained in Korea. I specialize in female and pediatric urology, and I taught in academia before I joined Pfizer. And I started my career in medical affairs about a decade ago, initially as an individual contributor in Seoul, Korea. And I've always been in medical affairs with experience across primary care, rare disease, urology, and I took country roles and regional roles in rare disease. 6 years ago, I moved to Japan with the Rare Disease Medical Affairs Unit in 2019. And for the first time in Pfizer, we were able to launch an asset in Japan before the US or European launch. And that launch was very successful, leading me to my second role in Japan as the country medical director. And during that role, we had a lot of assets. I had oversight over the entire medical organization, but I was also able to build a first in Pfizer, actually, a medical platform that centralized all medical activities, such as medical review, real-world evidence, patient engagement, and customer-facing medical excellence as well. And that led me to a global platform medical role. So I relocated with my family to New York about a year ago, and I was leading the changes in the organization from a global medical perspective. And recently, due to organizational changes, I moved back to the assets, and now I have oversight over vaccines and antivirals for international countries and pipeline vaccines in emerging markets. So in terms of my career, I've been very fortunate to have had increasing levels of leadership and wonderful experiences with organizational impact. And working and living in 3 different countries has helped me broaden my vision and cultural sensitivity. And I think that that expertise and those experiences have been very helpful for me to contribute at a global level as well.
Yeah, I think it's really impressive. Your background, clearly you have very strong clinical background, education, and mindset. But the fact that you are combining that with the patient-centric approach to the work that you're doing, as well as that cultural sensitivity, these are things that oftentimes I think get overlooked. And so the perspective, the talent, and the education and training you have is really vital and important. So congrats on all the work that you've done to date. Could you share a little bit about, again, your global experience working in different countries with different cultures? What inspired you to focus on women's health?
Sure. So maybe I can talk a little bit about my experience before I joined the industry. So, as I mentioned previously, when I was a clinician, I was a urologist, and that was considered to be a male field. However, when I specialized deeper, I focused on pediatric and female urology, which was actually an area that had not been a big focus of urology. But as the lifestyle changes and the eating habits change, and as women grow, women's lifespans are increasing. Actually, voiding dysfunctions have become a big area of urology as well. And in children, there are a lot of pediatric disorders that people may not be well aware of that we have been addressing. So that has been a start and a focus of my clinical career. And when I moved to pharma, I realized that there are a lot of assets, and there are a lot of assets that address diseases that are more prevalent in or actually unique to women. So, um, that kind of awareness enabled me to grow as a clinician in academia, but also in Pfizer. We have women's health treatments, such as oral treatments for heavy menstrual bleeding in premenopausal women with uterine fibroids. We also launched a conjugated estrogen that treats postmenopausal women that reduces hot flashes and the risk of osteoporosis. And we also have an injectable contraceptive that has been provided at a reduced cost to low-income countries in collaboration with the Bill Gates Foundation as well. So, having those experiences in a company that addresses women's specific needs has been very helpful for me to focus on women's health issues, but also in the company as well. The company has been very focused on developing female talent and providing leadership opportunities. And I've been very supported, and I've had great mentors and leaders in the organization that have helped me in my career as well. And I've done the same. I've tried to help develop leaders, both male and female, but also women who really needed some support and a good role model. And that has been a very rewarding journey.
Fantastic. And I think it's really admirable. You took an interest and took a leading role in the urology specialty space that was considered, I think, a male place to practice, and a lot of focus on the male urology sort of anatomy as well. And the fact that you really have highlighted and identified and supported more focus on women's urology and associated challenges is outstanding.
Thank you so much.
That's clearly an impactful moment when you're in medical school and you see this opportunity and you're aligning with your area of interest to move that forward. Are there any other sort of specific or impactful moments in your experience that really helped solidify your commitment to continuing to improve women's health?
Sure. Maybe I can start a little bit more specifically about Japan and Korea, because they are very different from the US. So, and it's not only the health, but also the working culture. So I may touch upon that before I go back a little bit more into the company. So, Japan has if you look at women's health, so Korea and Japan both have very high life expectancy, but also a lower gender equality in terms of self-rated health and also equality in the workplace. And for Japan and Korea, they both have national health insurance, which is very helpful to support preventive care compared to, I think, private insurance markets like the US. And early detection and treatment are easier in Japan and Korea, which results in longest lifespans globally in women. So Japan and Korea have been explained as demonstrating the gender paradox, which means that both countries have been able to achieve high longevity without gender equality. And that has been an area that actually, when I worked in Japan and Korea, the health industries, the pharma were trying to address, because, on the one hand, we have women who are quite good in physical health, but their mental health and their workplace equality was not as high as they wanted it to be. So if I could also explain that, how that has been very impactful and valuable from my experiences in Pfizer is that, our company celebrates women and equity, both from a leadership perspective, but also from a public health perspective. And, Pfizer has a very extensive women's health portfolio, and it offers patients choices to address personalized goals. And these would be for menopause, endometriosis, and other conditions. And these are very well supported by the science in terms of current research and key opinion leader engagements as well. So the importance of integrating sex and gender into the study of pharmacological properties, efficacy, and safety drugs is really crucial. And our company has taken into account the impact of females' physiology and hormones and also psychology as well.
That's fantastic, and it's reassuring to hear that that's the focus that the organization is taking, and it's much needed. And we need more organizations to be taking that approach. As we continue to support gender equity in the healthcare space. So clearly, Pfizer is a global health organization, very scientifically focused, but also supporting the differences between male and female physiology. How do you, in working in this organization, kind of balance the scientific and humanitarian aspects of the work that you're doing and the focus that you have?
Thank you so much. That's a great question. So, with the goal of improving health outcomes, our company and also the employees, including myself that work for Pfizer, we want to ensure global equity regardless of geography or economic status. However, this is challenging because of the differences in economic status, infrastructure, and educational levels. So, I think that some examples that I can share is that externally, Pfizer became one of the first companies to participate in the Advanced Market Committee, also known as AMC. And we've had a pioneering partnership between Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and donor governments to make vaccines available to infants and children in least developed countries. And also, those efforts have been demonstrated during the pandemic as well, when we tried to provide equitable access to the COVID vaccines globally. And also, Pfizer has partnered with Gavi and UNICEF to provide humanitarian relief to Rwanda and Gambia. And we've been able to enable these governments to launch an additional national immunization program. And these efforts to provide humanitarian relief to infants and young children, and also emergency assistance, has been well appreciated. And I think that improves, or that instills, a very strong sense of pride of the colleagues who are working in our company, because it's not just treatment, but it's also equitable access to people who need it. And I think that that's very rewarding as a doctor and also a person who works for pharma. And we're seeing a lot of improvement in the access in countries that I think needed it the most. So that's very encouraging as well.
That's nice to hear, because I think we're this program and the work we do, it has a global reach, but when a lot of the audience we're talking to are actually in the US, and we forget about the impacts in other areas. And so it's that's one of the things I love about your background, your perspective with working in different countries, again, different cultures, and how we're seeing improvements in being able to bring these innovations to some of these smaller countries that might not have the same income levels or access and things like that. So that's great, and it's nice to for you to be able to share that story here.
Mhm.
So I want to talk a little bit about, when it comes to gender equity and the challenges that we had, going back to some of the fundamental areas where the challenges have started, which is like in clinical trials. So historically, women most candidates have been primarily men through the years, up until maybe 10, 15 years ago. So a lot of the medical interventions we have are based on male physiology or body type, whatever. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing, or how Pfizer's approaching gender equity at the starting point in clinical trials?
Wonderful. That's a great question as well. So, clinical trials need to reflect the needs of not only men but also women and children, and the populations that need those clinical trials. So, for example, when we recruit patients, we want to develop a targeted recruitment campaign, which, if necessary, can reach diverse female populations. And we want to utilize community outreach programs to engage women in underrepresented communities. And also, in terms of the study design, so when necessary, we want to incorporate sex and gender analysis into study design, and we want to explore potential biological differences between the gender. And when we analyze the data, we want to make sure that we understand the sex and gender, the differences, any gender-specific effects, and also sometimes menstrual cycle tracking and its potential impact on study outcomes is also an aspect that we analyze. Also internally, in terms of the research team, We want to make sure that it's diverse and it has a balanced representation of all genders and all levels. We encourage mentorship programs for female researchers, and for education and awareness. We want to make sure that the researchers may be aware of any potential unconscious biases and its impact on clinical trial design and recruitment. And we have a lot of internal training programs as well to ensure that those biases would be understood and minimized. Also, in terms of policy changes, we're working to implement regulatory requirements for reporting gender disaggregated data in clinical trials. And also, we encourage funding agencies to prioritize research that can address gender disparities. And what is, I think, fundamentally important is that we have a patient-centric approach, and we engage female patients in the design and conduct of clinical trials to ensure that their needs are addressed. And this would result in, inclusion of a diverse range of women in clinical trials, and that would be more generalizable to a broader population, and that could lead to better treatment options for all genders. And this could result in not only health equity, but scientific advancement, because that could provide us with a deeper understanding of disease mechanisms and potential therapeutic agents.
That's fantastic. And again, very inspiring. And I love what you said about how you are bringing in the female voice, the female patient voice in early in the trial design. And quite frankly, that should be for any candidate, whether male, female, young, old, whatever, kind of closing that early clinical discovery validation with the commercial end, bringing, starting very early to bring those things together to make sure that we truly are solving for the patient's needs at the end of the day. I think that's fantastic. And just hope, support you going as fast as you possibly can in the proper regulatory and safety environment. So that's fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about, in the work that you've done, are there any particular diseases or infections that are disproportionately affecting women versus men based on what you've seen? And if so, why is that?
Sure. So, in terms of those factors, so there are differences in biological factors and social and behavioral factors. So, it's so diverse and hard to generalize, but maybe if I can provide a simple example. So, for HIV, so for social cultural settings, women are more likely to be infected with HIV in male-dominated settings, and also in terms of biological factors, sex hormones. Estrogen may protect against some infections, while progesterone and testosterone may suppress the immune response. So we have to take those into consideration. And the X chromosome encodes genes that affect immune responses as well. And the lifestyle differences between men and women may result in different behaviors. For example, men are likely to engage in behaviors that increase the risk of foodborne illnesses, which is quite interesting. And then women oftentimes experience pregnancy. So for pregnant women, maternal vaccination and how to manage fetal health are also things that we have to take into consideration.
That's great. And I think, it's just important to be informed as a patient about what you need to be doing and what's safe and effective. And so I think that's a really critical aspect. And there are differences at times between men and women. So it's important to understand that. Okay, so in your opinion, based on what you've seen from your early days in education and training to your time in clinical practice, as well as working in the life sciences industry, what do you think is the next big breakthrough that we should expect to see in women's health in terms of vaccines and anti-infective treatments?
Sure. So it may be a breakthrough in some ways, but also maternal vaccines have been around for a while. But I would say that we're seeing a big shift in the understanding and acceptance of maternal vaccines. And COVID-19 actually brought on that change, because the need of having COVID protection and protecting babies and fetuses was a big thing that the perception had changed. And maternal vaccines can improve women's health by protecting them from infections during pregnancy, and also prevent them from passing and enable them, to enable to pass antibodies to their babies as well. And this can help prevent severe infections, long-term health problems, and death. And if we look at it, for maternal vaccines, there's a lot of areas that we need to address in terms of awareness, because women are aware that vaccines are protective, but they're also very concerned about any potential risk or harm that might occur. So that making sure that we're providing very well-balanced scientific education, and women and healthcare providers also have a good understanding, is important. The risk perception is also something that we want to address, and make sure that we build trust with the external environment, and also the people in need is very important. So when we look at papers that talk about how we can improve the understanding and acceptance of maternal vaccines, there are a lot of studies about education and talking to the women and also the healthcare providers. But also, if we look a little bit broader, we want to make sure that we can talk to the government, we can provide sufficient access and reimbursement and policies that will facilitate that access. So if I look at it, maternal vaccination seems to be a very simple thing, but actually, if you provide access, it would benefit a huge population, and that would provide huge health benefits. So I think that if I look at the maternal vaccines that we are working on, I think that they could be considered breakthrough if and when successful in the near future.
That's exciting, and I certainly hope that we can actually experience that disruption and that positive outcome, because that would be beneficial to everyone across the board, starting with the earliest, the youngest, earliest generations that we have coming up. So that's fantastic. So with the HIT Lab, we're very focused on supporting innovation from a technology standpoint, and how do we accelerate the advancement of digital technology, data related innovations in support of overall healthcare. And in the space that you're in, I know you're in the vaccine and the asset space, but in the time that you've been, again, from your early days of training and education in medicine, your clinical practice, as well as your work that you're doing with Pfizer globally, what is your perspective on the opportunity that you have, or that you potentially see, with digital technology and data related to the assets and the vaccines and the anti-infection or antiviral assets that you're working with?
Sure, that's a great question. So if I go back to the COVID-19 pandemic days, so digital was actively incorporated because of the pandemic, and that provided actually big opportunity for us from a pharma perspective, because it helped facilitate communications with the government more efficiently. And previously, when we talked to the government, it was all face-to-face, very manual, and very relationship based. But because we started really actively conducting virtual interactions, that actually transformed the government ways of communicating. And when I was in Japan at that time, and Japan was also very focused on a face-to-face model, but they were willing to not only have virtual meetings, which were more effective and very data focused, but they also were willing to use digital technology, social internet platforms to communicate data as quickly and transparently as possible. So if we look at that, not only in terms of communication, we've shown, huge digital progress, and that has also led to more broader acceptance and utilization of digital communications to the healthcare providers and potential patients as well. But also, we're actively using AI internally for internal processes. We want to make it faster, quicker. We want to make sure that we're validating the data in a more efficient manner. And increasingly, we're using more digital technology and AI as well for drug development. And if we look at the technology, it's encompassing the whole drug life cycle. So I think that what would be more visible is that there are a lot more digital communications from pharma companies to the external stakeholders as well. But behind the scenes, there's also great improvement internally. So I think that's very encouraging. Some people may feel as if, oh, is this a threat to my workplace? How can I manage this? But
Mhm.
we're trying to do internally is to educate our colleagues that we want to elevate your capabilities so that you're using AI or digital tools and you're able to manage that from a strategic perspective and upskill yourself to be more valuable. And that has proven to be very powerful as well.
Well, that's great to hear. And, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. It's really been an honor and a privilege to speak with you. And your story is very inspiring, and it's really reassuring that very important life sciences companies like Pfizer have people, leaders like you in their organizations to help lead the path forward. And your background and experience and your global perspective and your culture, your patient-centric approach with that, cultural sensitivity is crucial to the healthcare, to healthcare of the future. So, um, really excited to see what you continue to do. Also, very excited to be working with you in the Women's Health Tech Initiative here at HitLab, and really, really informative, great, inspiring session. So, thank you so much, Hani, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you so much, Amy. I had a great time, and I feel free to follow up with any questions. I think that there might be some questions in the chat, but if there are any questions, we can follow up in the future. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And to the audience, thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you again next week. And have a great rest of your week. And just as I would like to say a thank you to our sponsors today. We couldn't do this without you. You can see their logos here presented. And of course, a special thank you to Dr. Lee. Great conversation. It's a privilege. Thank you.